Hey, you have Patrick Findaro, managing partner at Visa Franchise. Excited to have on Lorraine D'Alessio. Her law firm is a great partner at Visa Franchise. We worked together on different visa cases in the past years, E2 visas. Now, more recently, we're working together on O-1 visa cases, which are really more, well, I shouldn't say more, they are the dominant visa category that Lorraine's processing. Her firm does over 2,000 O-1 visas a year. I haven't heard of any law firm that does close to that. I hear 10, 20, 50, nothing in the thousands, definitely nothing in the 2000s. So you could say Lorraine is the foremost expert on O-1 visas in the United States. And it's a pleasure to bring her on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today. It's such an honor. Yes, we've really been honored to be working with a population of people that are just in that niche of their field, so that we can accomplish the visas for them and have them working in the U.S. On these wonderful visas that can be renewed as well.
Lorraine, could you briefly explain what the O-1 visa is and what distinguishes it from the other work visas out there for professionals?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the O-1 visa is reserved for people that have a distinction in their field. So there's something about them in terms of their technique, their skill set, their knowledge base. And the fields can be very wide ranging. So this could be entertainment, it can be tech, it can be business, it can be, a myriad of different options out there. And we look at that niche, and then we look to see if they have a corresponding interest to be working with them in the United States. So they do have to have that offer for work that's coming to them from the US, but it distinguishes them from all other visa types because we're able to argue that background and with documentary evidence so that they can be approved based on that past experience and that distinction to then come and work in the US. So it's not really like others where you're looking at, transcripts, or you're looking at, more of a black and white type thing. It's a little bit more argumentative, and I like it that way, a little bit more gray.
Yeah, it's true lawyering
Yeah,
compared to some of these other
exactly.
visa categories.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess what's kind of changed since the pandemic 2020 is a lot of these O-1 visa applicants, they work in more of the virtual world. Obviously, you have your entertainer clients, your actor clients, but a lot of our clients are content creators, software engineers, data analysts, where they can already secure some sort of work arrangement, kind of a test from abroad, and then with that kind of work arrangement, move to the United States on the O-1 visa. And
Yeah.
I know something that we've talked a lot at length, and Visa Franchise is acting as the agent, the business manager for many of these technologists. But I'd love to hear from you kind of what you want to see for that O-1 visa applicant, whether they're going to be sponsored by, I guess, the different options, whether they're going to be sponsored by their American employer, whether they're a founder looking to have their US company sponsor them, or working with a business manager and agent like we do at Visa
Mhm.
Franchise LLC.
Right, right. No, exactly. So there's different options there for the petitioner or the sponsor, and as the beneficiary of the visa, you always want to keep in mind that that role is super, super important. So if you're going to be coming into the U.S. and doing a type of work or a job that is going to be contained to just one position, one job the whole way through, then that would make sense to have an employer as the petitioner. However, for so many people that have these like niche, they're top of their field, or they have this really niche in their industry, and they're got this expertise in maybe the top 10%, or top 30%. So many of them are vetted by all kinds of different people, employers, prospective employers, and it doesn't always make sense for them to go, okay, I'm only going to be working with this one group. Often for them, they want to be working with all these other wonderful folks. So how do you approach this? So thank goodness the O-1 has the option option of doing an agency O-1, so an agency petition, which you have to be in the form of acting as an agent, which when you really look and study at the regulation there and see how it's been employed in practice, this is where we can use those, like business managers, as you mentioned, and even if you're on the entertainment side, agent talent managers as well, who are managing people, but at the same time they're connected with various employers, or they're helping to coordinate the finances side, the budgeting side of your work. And with them in that role, then you're looking at, okay, I could be taking on, a different employers, different jobs. And that could be, in fact, something that is even amended or adjusted as I'm moving through my O-1, which makes it quite understandable for someone who is in this type of field, because this is how they operate. This is the reality of their circumstance. And it's a very 2023, now soon to be 2024 situation for these folks. So I would say that, it's great, what you're mentioning there, and very much reflective of the reality of many of these O-1s. And I would say that we see a multiplicity of these types of cases for sure.
And can you break down the options of the O-1A and O-1B? I know we have a client case where they kind of were eligible for both, going the O-1A or the O-1B, which is an awesome situation to be in. But could you break it down, like what kind of is the typical case for the O-1A and O-1B? And if you're in a situation you could go for both, what could make most sense?
Yes, absolutely. Happy to. So with the O-1B, it tends to be very focused on, I would say, entertainment or creative. It tends to be the focus, since you're looking at, even if you look at the regulation, it's lead and critical in an organization, in a production or an organization of distinguished reputation. And what is your role, lead and critical? What are you contributing to that project? And that tends to drive the whole rest of the application, is your contribution, that beneficiary's contribution to those productions, or that work. So the O-1B, you're kind of looking at both sides. So for example, if you have like an actor, you're looking at their starring roles, their principal roles, how much speaking they've been doing in those roles, how much exposure they've had in the various projects that they've been working on. And then also, you're also looking at it from the other side in terms of who they've been working with. So that could be everything from studio level productions to indie work to web series, and your the whole rest of the application in terms of letters of support, in terms of the contracts and the compensation side of it, is all looking and supporting these various projects that we're structuring the whole case around. So the O&A for business is the O&A I typically see come up more with on a business side, or tech, sciences, and it's you're looking at a little bit of a different approach. So you're looking at memberships and associations. You're looking at awards of excellence. You're looking at also judging work by experts in the field. So this tends to measure well, because for so many folks that are in sort of a business stream or tech, often their portfolios and their work is looking at obviously various associations they've been working with, or peer review,
Judge panels,
judge
like
panels,
a boot
exactly.
camp
So
or startup competition.
yeah, so it's U.S. immigration is actually trying very hard to match up these criteria with the reality of these various folks. But you bring up a really important point. What if you have a situation where it could be an either, and
Like a
sometimes we see
content
this.
creator, right? Was
Yeah, a
that kind of
creative
a
producer.
new thing that when they created the A category and B, content, they're making money, they're managing themselves essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we see that a lot too. And so, and we study the patterns. And this is, I guess, I didn't set out to go, okay, I want to do this many O-1s. It was more like you do a great job on these cases. You're analyzing these cases. You're looking at the patterns, and then you decide based on each careful consultation and review of the facts of the case, which stream you're going to go through, and it's all a part of that legal strategy there. That's one of the reasons why I really like the O-1 is there's a lot of options and approaches for people, and I like that. I like options. I like when it's more kind of black and white and okay, well that can be a little stiff and not as fun. But
I think
with
the
the
role of
O-1,
the advisor becomes that much more critical when there are so many options, as well as adjudicating trends change. It's
right?
very different than a marriage visa,
Oh
or
yes,
adjustment of status after marrying a U.S. citizen, where there's not all that much that the lawyer will have value add, but it's not going to be the same as the value add on an O-1 or an EB-1A case where.
right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yes. Yeah.
And the approval rate I see from USAS is really high, and I know your firm has a quite a high rate. What do you
Yeah.
think? Is it the government just wants to have these people come in? I think there's 50,000 or so a year.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is it like, and
Yeah.
it's like the approval rates I believe in the 90s,
Mhm.
through
That's
the
right.
last stats that we received. What is driving that?
Yeah, I think the US is in a position right now where they're wanting to attract all this incredible talent, and they also want to reward these US employers with with great great talent from all around the world. So I think we're in a great period for that. I have definitely seen dips in the past, but right now we're on a really good trajectory. Right now, it's the approvals are quite good, and even if there are questions asked on the case, it's been quite doable, depending on what officer and what they're digging for, to answer those and to come up with the result we want. So you always try to avoid any follow-up questions, but sometimes those can hit. And again, studying the patterns and what may come also sort of reveals the U.S. really wants these people. The U.S. U.S. immigration is really asking the important questions that they want to get the best of the best in the door. So yeah.
And I know there's 8 criteria. Your law firm, and you have to have 3 of the 8 criteria. Do you aim for 4 or 5? Do you just make sure it's
Yes.
3 really solid ones?
Yeah, we actually try to get as many as we possibly can, and this is why we tend to work on our applications, and we try to encourage everyone to start early, so that we can work with the client. Not everyone is born to know what this test is. You don't start, a university or your first jobs out in the market to go, oh, I eventually want to be getting the O-1 visa.
And some people are
So it's
private for, security reasons, like in
right.
Brazil, Nigeria, South Africa. I've heard cases where very, very successful, very, very wealthy, top of their field, but they're not, they don't, nothing on Google. You Google their name, there's nothing. And it's because they have kids and they don't want to have people know that they've done pretty well in their profession.
Yeah, I mean, I've found. I mean, I had a meeting yesterday in Dallas with a gentleman who's foreign, originally foreign, now obviously fully naturalized into the U.S., but worth several $billions. And he said it himself in that meeting. He said, "I like to keep a low profile and he's coming through on the business stream.
And what do
So
you do for those cases? Because I imagine there are workarounds with support letters, and you don't have to be, a public person to get the one.
yeah, it's so for those that really just don't appreciate the PR or don't want the PR, yes, you're focusing more on those associations, the expert opinions of their work, the judging work. Usually, you're seeing that come up in their applications. Awards are usually there, and compensation, which is
Yeah.
That one is always helpful, where it's, but not everybody has that this glowing case too. I mean,
Sure.
I've seen cases where, again, keeping a low profile and maybe not having worked in as many organizations as would have been helpful or to work in or under various employers, because you want to show that there's been some accumulation, accumulation of work, and again that repeated demonstration of that top tier work within those various employers and projects and initiatives. So sometimes there can be challenges with that, and you want to try to stay away from the one hit wonders, but at the same time, sometimes just the reality of your case. So it's all about arguing it and presenting the facts and the evidence in the most compelling way possible. And I find that having that compelling presentation is just sometimes it's not even so much about us making certain recommendations of what they can do while we're putting together the application, or even if you take that early consultation, but you might not start for a month or two while we say, hey, work on this and work on that. Sometimes it's about just presenting how it's presented, and that can and explaining. I want to say also explain. You see, I'm very passionate about this. Explaining about what their field is, number one, because you can't assume that the officers even know that. So what this field is what this niche is, and for their specific country in the world, what country they're coming from, is Malaysia or what country, and how that impact was for them there nationally, or what the reach was. So yeah, I think that, and it adds to, in the OMB, they spend quite a bit of time discussing the commercial success. And I would say that, we also put that in quite a bit with our applications too. So the impact, public exposure, commercial success, like ultimately what are all these projects done at the end of the day? What is the
Does
storyline?
job creation help?
Um, you know, yes and no. Yes and no. I've used that before in applications, but I often find that it's the overall impact in terms of the monetary successes and the actual successes of products and certain deliverables for that organization or for that production, and its impact on the field itself. So, but I have commented on that before. We have in our applications, yes.
And how does it work on the compensation front? Because like I've spoken to Pakistani software engineers, for example, that are making in the 80 to 100K range, if not more, which puts them at the top 1% for software engineers in Pakistan. But the projects that they're working on in the US aren't going to be in the top, 5% when you look at their hourly rate that they're
Yeah.
charging. Can that be used that their prior compensation we're at
Yeah.
the top of their field?
Yeah. There's certain labor studies that we reference in our application so that we can make these comparisons, and that's just that's critical to move forward. And even sometimes you'll get an RFE about that too, if the lawyer is kind of might not have included it. Sometimes the adjudicator will be like, hey, what about this study or that? So to help make that comparison there. So absolutely, the country specific situation, but then comparing it, very strategically making that comparison to the US as well. So yeah, so where they would be if it was, if there's similar conditions. Yeah.
And then Lorraine, can you explain the role of the peer group consultation in the O-1 visa process? What are the challenges applicants might face, and how your firm works with them to address it?
Yes, absolutely. So, so starting from the entertainment side, there is a union for that U.S. immigration has designated for every profession within the entertainment world, and you just pretty much most of the time have to have it, and unfortunately, it costs money.
Yeah, it's a
So
pay to play.
Yeah, exactly. The unions got real busy when they created the O-1 and was like, wait a second, we need to, which, okay, that's fair.
And what are
Okay.
we talking? A few $100s for an
Yes,
assessment?
yeah, it varies. One of the more expensive opinions, which is from the PGA, comes in at 500 right now, I believe. So some of them are more expensive than others. I say a range of 250 to 500, and they take time. So and it depends. You really, that's again why you need to have a great practitioner behind you, so that we know, and we can line up everything with when your goal is to be inside the US and working with your work permit. So so that we can, once we prepare everything, we have the whole packet. We prepare a mini submission that goes to the union, and then we receive the opinion from their peer advisory, and then we go forward with insert it into the overall packet, and then move forward to U.S. immigration. And sometimes there's slowdowns. Sometimes there's slowdowns, and you need to know how to execute that and still reach your timing goals, even though there are delays maybe at the union level. So we need to be able to navigate that properly. On the O&A side, you want to be looking at those in the field. You want to be looking at those in the field that are, you want to be inserting letters of support that are at that peer advisory level, that are those that are, I like to maybe potentially like in a position to hire, or those that are kind of more at that mentor level. And there might not be, sometimes you have to get creative of who you'll target for that peer advisory. So again, where the lawyering comes in as well. And what you, from our experience, counts for the officers. So they can, believe it or not, sit there with the checklist and go, okay, we got this, perfect. So, and we'll give a pass. Really, at the end of the day, this is a pass fail. Like people, yes, we want to strive for the A++ because we want that pass to be like, overwhelming with like approval, go ahead. But at the end of the day, we really just
Pass
want,
fail.
they're hitting that checklist, boom, 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 and through the door. Yeah.
And we get a lot of inquiries about just like the O-1 visa, because USAS, they get an approval for 3 years, but the reciprocity schedule, sometimes it's like 3 months, sometimes it's 5 years.
Yeah.
How does that work out? How long do you actually get the O-1 visa for?
Yeah, so the O-1 is good for 3 years at a time, and what's so great about it is that it's something that can be applied for right away, and there sometimes people forget that there's actually two very important stages of the O-1 processing. So one is at the agency level, where you're processing to get the I-797 approval notice. And then the other actually happens at the consular if you're not Canadian. So you have to go through and you have to make a stop there. Most of the time you're going to have an interview. And then, for some consulates right now on the renewals, and if you have a residency in that country, they are waiving interviews, but you have to look at it a case by case and then come in. So everything triggers, obviously, once the O-1 is approved and that validity period, you want to be looking at that first date there. That's the time period of your O-1 that you can access it and activate it and start using it. So you want to, good practitioners strive very hard to work with you to try to get the max amount of time, which is 3 years. And essentially then what you're doing is then you're applying for future extensions of stay from that time period. So, and that could be like a whole new 3-year period, or it could be less depending on the initiatives or projects that you're coming in to work on. But we always want to keep in mind, especially when we're plotting out our timeline of when we activate this and get this moving, that there's those two steps. And I think since the pandemic, the consular side has been extremely relevant, like very, very important part of this whole thing. And the backlogs that we've seen there have been like on and off, have been quite impactful for those as they're trying to navigate through this. So you definitely, again, want to be, working with us so that we can help you through that. Yeah.
And I know there's some limited countries like Brazil. We had a client, dual national from Brazil, and he switched to the E2 visa because with his Italian passport, it was 5 years. And I think
Mhm.
for Brazil, for the one, it's like it's like a 3 month like single entry, or it's like
Oh, yes,
super
the
restricted.
reciprocity.
So
Yeah, the
what do you do
reciprocity.
with those cases? Like, is it kind of come on the O1, then we go right to we try to get the green card application going? How
Yeah,
does
so
that
what's
work?
so frustrating for them is, like, obviously, people that are extraordinary, they travel, they work.
Yeah.
So, like, they come to the US, they got projects, initiatives to do, and then they need to go and travel. So if you're one of those countries with such as this kind of reciprocity arrangement where your visa stamp is only good for such a small period of time, then you're leaving, then you have to go back to the consulate again. So it's such a pain, agreed. And so definitely for, as you mentioned, Brazil. There's many other countries I could list where you're strategizing with your client. Indeed, green card, or even understanding what their agenda is or their schedule is, and discussing what the travel is going to be like. I think that one of the bigger challenges has been obviously these backlogs, and it's been on and off. So getting appointments, right now, France has been a headache for a lot of people. So you want to know what other options are out there for this so that you can get quickly, excuse me, in and out with the appropriate stamps if you have to travel. But getting a green card started, you can do that from the beginning if the case is one that qualifies for the green card, obviously. So if it's not quite ready, then you want to be sitting down and chatting with your client about the kinds of criteria they need to be looking at and thinking about, and the types of documents they want to be preparing so that they are ready for the green card when that's time. And yeah, so you hit the nail on the head with indeed a strategy for green card, but it's also kind of analyzing the travel a bit and their agendas coming up and how best to navigate them basically around the world, so that, because not everyone is ready for green cards right away, and also it takes time to process a green card. So you're looking at right now, if you were to start working on a green card preparation, getting it processed, getting it filed, getting your actually getting the cards in the door, it's upwards of a year process. So not going to be quick, because obviously, yeah.
Yeah, we've had many more clients. We've had a few clients do the EB1A, but a lot more do the EB1C, EB2 NAW, or through the spouse EB3 or EB2.
Mhm.
So we haven't seen it as much in volume on the EB1A side, but from what prior discussions, it seems like the adjudicating trends are more positive, and there's a lot of people getting approved for the EB1A. And I guess the big benefit of that, EB2 could take 2 to 3 years,
Yeah,
EB3
that's
perm
right.
3 to 4 years. And what are you
Mm.
seeing for the EB1A? How is it about just a year for people to get a green card?
Yes, yes. India is having some slowdowns right now, but yes, it's first preference category, and that's why it's like the hot commodity right now for many Chinese and Indians right now is, I want to go for that. Whereas, a few years back when the NIW was current and we were seeing like some really good approvals hitting us, you'd often see people like doubling up. Like, I want to be, I want to really look at both options, as NIW or EB1A, depending on what their background is. So yes, yeah, and right. So right now, it's very hot right now to do in terms of timing to the EB1A, as well as the EB5. If you can approach it from an investor standpoint, and you actually have those funds. This is a good option, but not everyone has them, and but it's nice to know about.
And then the EB1A, like, what's the big jump? Like, what do you really want to see from the applicant where it's like, okay, you're here on the O1A or O1B, getting to that green card sub level at the EB1. What do you really want to see from
Yeah,
them and hammer to the
yeah,
USCIS?
absolutely. So I know I said it before, but it's so important looking and analyzing and understanding the initiatives and projects that they've been working on throughout their career path. And, you know, um, adding in some, if you have been on your O-1, adding in some new projects that you've done in the US, so we can see, that work accumulation. You don't have to show. You could actually go straight to the EB1. You don't necessarily have to have had an O-1 previously, but I find it's helpful if I have a case that has, so I can look at those projects, I can look at those initiatives and really tease out what exactly, has been the contribution and how significant and, all that. And I would say, awards are quite helpful, but not everybody has those. And for those that are not afraid to be bashful, are not bashful, looking at the PR side, looking at third-party recognition of the work, and associations, memberships, and voting and judging work that they've done is so important. I know we've talked about it before, but it really is. And so we want to be including those. There is also a part of the application that speaks to, an affidavit discussion of what their upcoming work could be, or sort of charting out an agenda of what that could be. I like to get creative with this. I like to include really strong letterhead, really strong companies behind them, if I can get it, to talk about that. For the EB1A, it's not, this is a self-petition, so it's not required to have a job offer, but at the same time, that sort of discussion about what's coming up, I think helps to set the mood as well in the application. So definitely for this. So,
We
and
see
I
that,
guess,
we see that with our clients that invested in businesses, could have been franchises a year back, where getting the EB2NAW is a lot easier if it's not a proposed endeavor, but it's been an endeavor. Hey,
yeah,
I've opened up 3 locations, 50 plus employees. This is what I've already done, and I'm looking to get a green card. Where the process seems a lot easier than if it's like, this is what I plan to do.
right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. And if you're from a background that's more science, academics, the citations and how you're cited is a whole other can of worms there. So we've spent a lot of time analyzing that, and what we can bring into the application as well. We just had a big approval in our office, for someone that uh, had a little less than what we typically would go forward with, but we were able to emphasize other criteria and they got in. So I think that, it just really depends on their background and what the field is, and then we go from there in terms of analyzing the criteria and how we're going to present it. Yeah.
And then I know Joe Biden, the White House, has had an initiative to make it easier for people in the field of AI to move to the US. And I believe the O-1 visa was one of the categories mentioned. Um,
Mhm.
what are you seeing there? Is this just for, engineers and data scientists, or is it also for project managers or entrepreneurs that have more of a marketing background? What are some of the trends there? How do you see this playing into 2024?
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. Yeah. We work with some very, very top and larger tech companies. So we're seeing quite a bit of flow. Yes,
Imagine.
indeed, on the AI side. The next 5 years are going to be very interesting for all fields, perhaps even law. So yes, it'll be quite interesting. The engineers can absolutely come through the O1A category or the EB1A category, and we do it all the time. I would say, it's usually very hard on sort of like the press side and some of the other criteria that you would have more in the marketing or the creative producer or
Yeah.
those fields. So you're focusing more on the letters of support, the compensation, other criteria that fit them a little better with what they have. And obviously you always have to be careful with, the delicacy of the work that they're actually doing, which is pioneering incredible things. So that innovation, bringing that to the fore, very important in the application. And I've had many clients go, but I don't want anyone to know about what, and it's like, it's just being seen by the officer.
And you see
So,
that in some industries like
yeah.
biotech, it's very secretive until,
Oh
they
yeah.
get to a certain stage.
Yeah, we've come across that as well, of course, and it's understandable. And there's ways to present things, and ways for the third parties, so the letters of support people for the most part to discuss things, and so that we can, get the criteria, but, deal also with those concerns. And I would just say on the marketing side, those tend to be pretty tough cases actually, which is kind of interesting. You would think that maybe the engineers would, but um, international brand strategists, marketing, U.S. immigration hasn't always loved them, and it does matter. Are you going to put it on? Are you going to put them under the O? So if it's a temporary status, if you're going to put them on OMB, are you going to do the O1A, or obviously the green card is more altogether. But it's a studying the patterns kind of approach there, and also looking at the resume and their list of projects and analyzing the presentation to then know how we'll present it. But funny enough, marketing tends to be tough, not impossible. When able to get a lot of wonderful people approved, which I know many of my happy clients are out there, but it's you earn your legal fee, yeah.
Well, we have just 3 questions, if you don't mind going through. I'm going to be respectful of your time. The first one
Sure.
from Lucas: what's the process for O1 visa extensions? Are there any limitations?
Yeah, absolutely. So there you have to have an updated offer in order to extend. So it could be updated, or it could be a whole new employment that you're doing. So extensions is an interesting word. There's actually different options for how to essentially get another O1. And we have to look at the nature of the offer that you have, whether your existing one is being updated or if you're getting a whole new one, and how long it is for us to then advise how we're going to execute it. But they can be done very smoothly. It's just all about the nature of what that offer looks like. So yeah, and you can get up to 3 years, and depending on what that offer looks like, how busy it's going to be making you, and to account for that for another 3-year period, and how that actually looks, how that physically looks on the offer. Yeah.
And then from Thomas, we have what rights and privileges do family members of O1 visa holders have?
That's a great question. So family members come in under O3, so they're dependents onto the O1. Family members can be with the O1 for as long as you're in the US for, and they can actually go to school as well, but they cannot work. So be with you, get schooling, but no work is pretty much the framework there.
And
Yeah.
that's your job of getting them a green card if they like staying in the
Right.
US.
Right. Yes. And I also want to mention, for the spouses, we will spend a lot of time looking at what other potential visa options they may be able to get if they want to work. And that is a whole other thing, a whole other part of the consultation. So as well.
And then Douglas is asking, is there a straightforward method to determine whether a person should initially pursue an EB1 visa, a green card, instead of an O1 visa?
That's such a great question, Douglas. So I would say, we really want to be looking at that resume, and we have questionnaires as well. And what we're looking for is, if they are one of the few that has risen to the top of their fields for the purposes of the EB1A, or if they are, if it's more like on the level of a distinction, like they have a unique capability, they've demonstrated that, they've made those, significant contribution lead positions or roles in their past work, if it's on the entertainment side. And you can, as a skilled practitioner, where you're looking through that resume or questionnaire, you can usually pin out pretty well. Also, we sit there with the criteria, and we carefully look to see how many. For the green card, it's 3 out of 10. So if we want to be getting much more than just 3. If we see those there, and we see them very, very strong in comparison to the recent approvals we've had, we're happy to move ahead with this. But I'm kind of more of a cautious practitioner. I really like to see people get an O1 before they get the EB1. I think in my career of doing this for dating myself, getting close to 20 years now, it's I think I see more approvals, when I have an O-1, and then when I can then make the application for the EB-1, because I'm showing them, look, they met the first step there, the first standard. Now we're going to go way up here, and showing the officer that. Now, if they have an Academy Award, or if they have a Nobel Peace or something like that, obviously there's exceptions to the rule. And even if they don't even have that, they just have like really incredible resume of work, and it's well documented, and we can hit all these criteria in EB-1. Okay. But I would say with many cases, I like to see that O-1 first. And sometimes, I just had this discussion just yesterday with a tech company that we just signed to work with now on a really important case. And, he had a lot of H-1Bs, and now he's going for the EB-1, obviously Indian national. He's Indian national. And, if it's in the tech company's budget and they don't mind doing it, maybe instead of doing that, H-1 extension, or maybe, you can do concurrent filings too. Maybe let's see how he does, because, perhaps the EB-1 case isn't a slam dunk. So let's see how he does with the O-1, and then that kind of gives us a training wheels and to the green card. So I don't know. I'm a little bit more. I like to be a little bit cautious, and but definitely analyzing the trends, analyzing the patterns helps us make that decision of how we're going to recommend to move forward. And then ultimately, the beneficiary and the employer will, make the decision and let us know. So.
And then we have a question from Luna. Final question. Could you provide examples of acceptable evidence for arts and categories?
Yep, absolutely. So, it's so within the arts, it matters if you're approaching this from film, television perspective versus performing arts. Film, television. So I'll just start there. It is so much wider than what the industry actually tends to accept on IMDb, and you can be using in the application evidence of commercial work. You can be using evidence of short films, indie work. You can be using, as well as the traditional, credits that you're seeing on IMDb as well, but it's much broader. And
it seems like that's how most people make their money. Like most of my artist friends, they make their money in commercial work, and then they have their passion projects.
Yeah. I'm not shy that I am I've done a lot of modeling in my lifetime, and did a lot of commercial work, so yeah, I agree. And
you're not also always doing what you're super passionate about all the time in that space.
Yeah, right. And what's so interesting is the influencer field is very big right now, and it's quite accepted by U.S. immigration. So we can also within the arts be looking at the followings, what brands have been worked with, and the sort of the monetary impact as an influencer you've had for them, et cetera, exposure that it's had. So there's this as well. The performing arts, obviously, I guess it depends on, so if you're doing theater, or, if you're, it's visual arts, or there is quite a bit of evidence that we can include there. And what I tend to ask people to do is give me a bit of a brain throw up of this. It's kind of a crude way of saying it, but a chronology, if you will, of all the stuff that you've done. Because sometimes when you're having that initial consultation and you're driving to get, what are we going to focus on here? Sometimes things can get missed. People just maybe don't remember it or whatever. So taking some time, putting together, and then presenting for that consultation is actually quite helpful. So and then we can dive through and see what types of evidence that we can be using.
And then Yeah, really appreciate it, Lorraine. For anyone that's interested to further explore going the business agent, business manager agent route, we're happy to have a free discovery and present a solution if there's a good fit there. As well as Lorraine, what's the best way for someone to contact you and explore what visa option is best for them, whether it's the O-1, EB-1A, or many other A to Z categories that your firm handles?
Yes, absolutely. Please go to our website and set up a consultation. We're D'Alessio.law. So DALESSIO.law. And you can just jump right in there and sign up for a consultation. And they are complimentary. We're so happy to chat with you about your situation. And I really encourage you to do that. You've made the first step of joining this seminar and learning and absorbing, but don't sit back and self-diagnose. We're here to help, and we want to be thinking about us as part of your A team to drive toward your goals and reach your goals.
And I know for this, and in particular the O-1 with your thousands of coaches, you're very much in it for the long run, where I've seen this firsthand. If someone's not ready today, you're providing them the resources to get ready in 3 months, 6 months, or however much time it takes to hit those 3, 4, 5 criteria to be a good candidate.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. That's right.
Well, thanks so much, Lorraine, and appreciate everyone that participated today and the questions you asked.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. And boy, you're going to be ready to go, and can't wait to see you here in the US.
Appreciate it.